Let's get some football at 4. Adam Caplan's in the house, and he joins us now on the Sports Bash Live. A little roster reset as we take a look at the Eagles on the offensive side of the ball in this draft coming up. We're less than 2 weeks away, or just over 2 weeks away, I should say, to the draft, and Adam Caplan is here. What's going on, Adam?
Yeah, 2 weeks from this Thursday. My one baseball note or comment, and then we'll get back to football, obviously, so I'm here. I really like Stott. I wish they would have Turner as the leadoff, Stott as the 2. When you really look at this lineup, Schwarber's a 4. He's not a number 2. He's a power hitter. I don't understand. He strikes out too much, doesn't put the ball in play enough, but he's obviously a tremendous power hitter. It wasn't like when you and I were growing up, Mike, the power guy had to be 3, 4, 5. It's different now, and I get that, but I just don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I like Stott in the 2 hole. I said that earlier. I bat him 2. I bat Turner 1. But to go from 1 to 8 is a little weird. And then to move him back to 1 tomorrow, it just seems a little odd. But all right, let's get a little roster reset here. Yeah. 11 of the 22 projected starters drafted by the Eagles, 7 on offense, 4 on defense. 13 of the 22 Super Bowl players were drafted or signed by them. So let's go inside the Eagles' positional needs here and take a look at some of those guys that will be back that we know will be starting next season, or this season, I should say.
Yes, this season 23. So, Mike, the big focus of our really the last week or so on Inside the Birds on our podcast, which you could find on every platform, including YouTube, is that the offense is really – I mean, look, you've got 7 starters coming back. Hurts, both receivers, got it to tight end, four or 5 starters in the offensive line. They're in really good shape there. This offense will be tremendous. So you don't have to worry about that. Yes, they need a number 3 receiver as we look at the offense. There's no doubt they don't have one. Quez Watkins failed last season as it. I know that he had a shoulder injury. He just didn't play well. Let's call it like it is. They've got to look at that, Mike. That absolutely is a need. A pure slot. Watkins is not a pure slot. He's a vertical slot. He doesn't make tough possession catches. That's what you want. We've used the Jason Devine example. Obviously, he's a part of our show Inside the Birds, our pregame show, and, of course, the Q&A show. They need that guy on a third down who's going to make that tough catch. They don't have that guy in terms of the slot receiver. Wide receiver depth overall is the problem. They also don't have that swing offensive lineman right now, totally. Now, Jack Driscoll could be that guy. There's no doubt he could be the right guard. We'll have to see. Is Cam Jurgens going to be that starter? We know that he's the feature at center, whatever that is. But Jack Driscoll is really the only guy right now you could say, okay, look, he's played a little left tackle. He's better at right tackle or guard. But they really need that veteran guy who started a lot of games. Mike, to me, you got to have that fallback option on the offensive line, that veteran guard tackle.
A quick question about that. You mentioned Jurgens. A lot of mock drafts have Peter Skronsky, who was an offensive lineman. If they took a lineman at 10, would he be the starter, or do they want Jurgens to be that guy?
Well, if they drafted Skronsky, he would be their starter right guard. There's no doubt. Jurgens is the future at center. Remember, he got cross-trained at guard last season. Let's not forget, Mike, when you look at Cam Jurgens, last year was only his 3rd year ever in his football career as an offensive lineman. He was a tight end before that at Nebraska and in high school, so he's still learning. No, if you're taking a right tackle, obviously the tackles are set, but if you're taking a guard who could play tackle at 10, that guy's starting. And that's Skronsky would start. From what we've heard, he's better at right tackle or guard. He's really not a left tackle at the next level, and not that they need that, but now. What we could also say is, if again, this is all hypothetical. They could theoretically, because they would be looking at Skronsky as a rookie potentially starting, and Driscoll's been around. Now, by the way, he's on last year's rookie deal. They could say, okay, you know what we're going to do? Skronsky's a rookie. We can open it up. But the belief would be going in that Skronsky's got to start because you just spent the 10th pick overall. But if he's not ready, or if they decide, maybe he's going to have to learn how to play this position at the next level, then we'll put Driscoll in there, or we'll have Driscoll push him. But overall, yes, if you took a guy at 10, that guy's got to start.
Yeah, all right. Let's look at some of the veteran availability that's still left out there at the positions you just mentioned. Wide receiver slot, wide receiver outside, veteran outside guys. Who are some guys that you possibly would have your eyes on here if you're Howie Roseman?
All right, so I want to address the Julio Jones situation. I know we on our Inside the Birds Twitter we put a poll last week. It was Julio Jones and somebody else as like the potential third receiver. Julio Jones is 34 years old. He's near the end of his great career, which he should be a Hall of Famer. Has in major trouble staying healthy, going back to his days with the Falcons, particularly late in his career there. With the Titans, I know talking to Titan source, he just sometimes was not available in game. Like sometimes he said, hey, I'm just not ready. I'm just not physically able to get out there. With the Bucs, he was a little better, had some good tape, but also was hurt with knee and lower body injuries. To me, and again, the guys that are available are backups. They're not starters. They're third, fourth, and fifth receivers. Olamide Zaccheaus is a guy we've talked about on Inside the Birds for a while now. He could play inside or outside. He's 5'8" and 0.2 of an inch. He's been a starter for the Falcons for a couple of years. His contract just expired, his rookie deal, and the GM, Terry Fontenot, did not draft him with the Falcons. That's probably why he's still available. Now, he's smaller than you would like, but he's a good player. I'm kind of surprised that he's still out there. Laquan Treadwell, who's a former first-round pick of the Vikings, who Rick Spielman, the former Vikings GM, came on our show a couple times inside the Birds and talked about him, how Treadwell put too much pressure on himself. He just could never be the player that he should have been, but he's got good size. He would be a number 4. DeMarcus Robinson would be a number 4. He's out there, nephew of Marcus Robinson. Remember him for the Vikings and Bears? Jameer Burke could fly, but he's not really a slot. Chris Conley, now he's a good player. I've talked to coaches that work with him. He's a fourth receiver who's physical, could block, could play special teams, and he's got really good size. He could play that Zach Pascal role, because what we're told is Nick Sirianni prefers a taller slot, a more physical slot if he could find that guy. So those would be some guys to look at the receiver position.
Yeah, that's some veteran guys there, an interesting list, and obviously we'll see if they think they need to add one there, and of course there is the draft available as well. And then we just talked about offensive line because they did take a hit a little bit there. They lost Sayamala, they lost Andre Dillard. That's two key guys. I know Sayamala was a starter, and Dillard was really your top veteran tackle there. So anybody available that they could look at as a swing player.
Now, okay, so with Andre Dillard, we had a note, I'm going to say last May or June, that the Eagles were probably going to cross-train him at guard, and I don't know if we saw it in training camp, but as you know, Mike, he had snaps in season at guard. So not having him back, they're so thin. Like, they've got Fred Johnson and Roderick Johnson. They've limited starting experience, but they need to show they can make the team. To me, they really need to look at this veteran guys, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, but there's not a lot left. The veteran guys have been picked over in free agency. Here are the best guys available. Billy Turner, who's a guard right tackle. He's played a little left, I'm told, but he's really a guard right tackle. George Fant, a former basketball player, I believe at George Mason, if not mistaken. He's a left tackle, right tackle. He's had some knee problems in his career. He had an ACL injury early in his career with the Seahawks. He's missed some time, but he's a good player. Cam Irving is a multiple positional player, but he's a backup only. I know Billy Turner was coming off an injury from last season. Broncos, from what I understand, have some interest in bringing him back, but they really need to look at one of these guys out there because you don't want to be asking yourself, okay, what's our plan? We've always said this Inside the Birds. If a starter gets hurt, what's your recourse here? What's your plan? You need to have that answer. Right now, the Eagles don't have a great answer if somebody gets hurt on the offensive line.
And also, guys, don't discount and forget the punting position. It was a spot in the Super Bowl that bit them a little bit.
Wait, you said, I'm sorry, your Lineberger, you said punter?
Yes,
the
punter.
Yeah,
the punter, yes.
All right. This has also been picked up. It's really strange. Long snapper, Mike, and punter, there've been a ton of these guys signed. The best punters available are Matt Hawk. Hawk has played for a bunch of teams, Buffalo. He's actually been with the Dolphins. He's been a good player. And Jeff and I were laughing the other day. Andy Lee, I did not realize he's as old as he is. He's been with Cleveland, the Cardinals, and the Niners. He's 40 years old, but still a good punter. I know that fans were not happy with Brett Kern. He didn't punt well. And Michael Pilardi is much younger now. He had an issue with the Patriots. They let him go. He filed a grievance against them because he got suspended, and they didn't want to pay the money, the guaranteed money left in his contract. So, but he's out there, and he's not a bad punter. So they've got to do something. At the very least, Mike, they've got to bring somebody in to compete with Sipos. They just have to. That was Sipos really fell off, particularly coming back from his injury. And knowing the Eagles as I do, I'd be stunned if they didn't have, at the very least, by the time training camp starts, not to have to compete against him.
All right, let's flip over to the defense because they have a lot of needs, and there's some interesting names that we're going to hit on here in free agencies that are still available. But a lot of needs still on that side of the ball.
A ton of them. And I know Jeff and I were debating. He and I don't agree on this. Safety is not just a need now, it's a need in the future. You've got two veterans at safety who are projected as starters. One's coming off major injury problems in his career with Justin Evans. You know, he missed 3 seasons where he didn't play. And you've got the other kid who, Terrell Edmonds, Mike, never lived up to the height, weight, and speed, former first-round pick. They're both on 1-year deals. Nobody has any idea who's going to start in 24. And by the way, I'm not thinking they're going to be cut, and they project to start, but the guaranteed money in their contract is so low. If they don't have a good training camp, one of them doesn't guarantee they'll be there. So it's absolutely a major need. So is D-tackle, no doubt, for the future. Remember, folks, the draft is about the future. Free agency is for current needs. The draft, as GMs will tell you, is for future needs. After the season, Fletcher Cox's contract's up. Contavious Street is on a 1-year deal. Milton Williams, they see him more as a third defensive tackle. And Jordan Davis, before he had the high ankle sprain, Mike, flashed a little bit, but as Greg Cosell told us on our show, and he was trying to be as nice and kind as possible, the tape was, look, he needs a lot of work. Greg talked about the times he got stood up and he didn't have good balance and would have to leave games because he didn't have the good conditioning. Now, this is a huge offseason for him. They need one more guy, Mike, particularly for the future. They need a 3 technique because they need the guy to take over for Fletcher Cox. And that's something we'll be talking about on our Thursday show, which drops on 6 a.m. Eastern, where we go over picks 10 and 30, kind of like early intel who it could possibly be. But, yes, I would agree, definitely for the future, D-tackle is in need.
All right, so let's take a look at now. You mentioned free agency is for the now. Some D-tackles that can maybe help this team out today.
Yeah, former Temple star Matt Ioannidis, he's the best guy out there. Al Woods, Seattle's cut him, brought him back. He's an older player, 36 years old. Michael Brockers, someone asked about Michael Brockers a while back. I didn't get the chance to answer it, but I'll just tell you now, Michael Brockers is kind of finished. Like, he might still try to play. He was a weekly inactive. The Lions owed him a ton of money. They just didn't think he could help them. And by the way, the Lions ran an odd man front like the Eagles do. I just don't see it. Christian Covington's not a bad backup. He could play in a 34 or 43. The Eagles run an odd man front again, and Nick Williams could also play in an odd man front. It's with the Giants. The Eagles know him from his days with with Detroit and Chicago. So, and then the DNs. This talk about a buyer's market, Mike. Listen to some of these names. Frank Clark, longtime starter with the Chiefs. Now, he's not the same player he once was. Jadeveon Clowney, okay, yes, he's an older player, a lot of injuries, but a guy could play inside a nickel. Yannick Ngakoue is by far the best pass rusher out there. It's stunning that he's still out there. Talk about a buyer's market. William Golston is just a run stopper. Carlos Dunlap and Al-Quadin Muhammad. But, man, if you need a DN or a couple guys who could be stand-up pass rushers, Clowney, Ngakoue, Dunlap, you're in business. I mean, you can do that with these guys.
Yeah, there's some interesting names there. Clark, by the way, with the Chiefs last year. And Ngakoue, I mean, I remember his name a couple off seasons ago. Some people talk about trading a first-round pick to get him when he was with Jacksonville, and he's still on the market there. Dunlap with the Bengals, he was had a couple big years. All right, linebacker. Linebacker's interesting because – we know they don't really value that spot. They don't want to put a lot of money into that spot. They did pay Nick Morrow, but no guaranteed money, as we chronicled last week. Do they still need to add, and is there someone that they could bring in at the linebacker spots?
Yeah, they're really light there, Mike. They only actually have 5 on the roster. One of them, Sean Bradley, won't play on defense. He's a special teamer. Christian Ellis is a guy who's been a special teamer, who they like to take. They just want to take a bigger look at him. And Davion Taylor is a long shot to make the team. He's on the roster. We'll see if they bring him to training camp. So you really only have one guy you could really use. They have to do something there. Nick Morrow, and right now with Nakobe Dean are projected starters. Dean's a virtual lock. Morrow should start, but he has a contract that's very cuttable. They wouldn't owe him a dime if they cut him. So Nick's got to show that he can make the team, but I know they're excited to have him. And he wanted to come here because he wanted to have a chance to play. And by the way, it's a buyer's market also at inside linebacker. Zach Cunningham is a guy who could still play. He's made a ton of tackles in his career. He's had some injuries. Damian Wilson, who the Panthers avoided paying his roster bonus, I'm told. Miles Jack, who's seen better days. He's never been the player that the Jaguars thought he would be when he was drafted with the Jaguars as the first rounder. Gian Brown and Rashad Evans were smaller linebackers. A guy that we had reported some years ago that the Eagles had interest in, Nick Kwiatkowski, who bounced. He had a big contract with the Raiders. The Eagles were not interested in paying him that, but he was on their list to take a look at. And Jalen Smith, formerly of the Giants and obviously a first-round pick of the Cowboys. Again, buyer's market at inside linebacker.
Yeah, inside linebacker spot. We'll see if the Eagles look to add another one. And then, outside pass rush guys, there's some interesting names here as well. And you wonder how much more they need to look at that spot because really, you've got one of the premier guys in the game at that spot.
Yeah, no, remember, the Eagles are going to run. They run a multiple front. Yes, they play more of an odd than even front, no doubt about it. They'll run. I'm told they definitely ran some 4-3 last season. Run 34, 5-2 is a predominant front, no doubt. But remember, Graham is on Brandon Graham, the great Brandon Graham will be Eagles Hall of Famer someday. I mean, Mike, he just turned 35 recently, actually last week. So Sean Jackson's really not contributed very much. Remember, they cut him last season, brought him back. Josh Sweat is obviously one of the starting DNs. They need one more defensive end, which they could potentially get in the draft. Derek Barnett on the last year of his 2-year deal, he got hurt. We know about the ACL injury. They have no plans to cut him. He's expiring a change in heart. He'll be on the roster this season. They need another DN. There's no question about it. No, a name to watch out for is Janoris Robinson, who they signed off the Vikings practice squad. The Eagles love his length. He's 6'5", really long arms, really talented kid. He's a little raw, but the Eagles would like to take a look at him. And then looking at you mentioned Hassan Reddick. Obviously, he's terrific. But they need one more guy to go opposite him, and they don't really see Sweat, although he's done some standing up, but they like to play more with his hand down. They definitely need another outside linebacker. It doesn't have to be in the first round, but they could use another pass rusher, and that's going to happen one way or the other. It's whether it's the draft or the rest of the free agency, the Eagles will add somebody else.
All right, and then corner. You mentioned corner, and then we know they signed 2 guys, but if one of them got hurt, no veteran to step in. Are there veterans that are available?
Yeah, and Mike, remember, Greedy Williams has missed a ton of time, when we look at it, yeah, he's going to start. I mean, he's going to be their third outside corner, but he's missed 27 games, Mike, in 4 years. You can, as you just said, you just cannot depend on this guy. So to me, you got to look at the guys on the street. Shaq Griffin, we mentioned on our previous show, formerly of the Jaguars and Seahawks. He's had a lot of injuries, but he's talented. Marcus Peters is 30. Still has plenty left to be a really good veteran backup, but if these guys want to get paid, the Eagles aren't going to pay them. They're not going to pay a lot of money. Greedy Williams is getting the veteran minimum, as we outlined, with a $600 guaranteed signing. William Jackson, talented kid, better man cover corner. Now, what we don't know with Sean Desai is we know the Fangio system. It's way more zone than man. So we don't know. Is it just that they're going to be looking for a zone corner if they sign a veteran? Like Chris Harris could do both. What will a guy like Chris Harris is out there, a Fabian Moreau who could do both, Shaq Griffin could do both. So, but again, it is a buyer's market. See, the great part about the Eagles waiting for these guys, or potentially waiting for these guys, Mike, is they've got the leverage here. Once you get past the draft, it is a supreme buyer's market. Now, the Eagles, remember, they signed a couple players after the draft last year. They did it back in 2017 when they looked for at the running back position with LeGarrette Blount. So, again, you don't have to sign anyone right now.
Yep. All right. We got about 2 weeks to go before we get to the draft. So they have between now and the 27th to add players in free agency, then draft, and then as Adam just chronicled, after it really becomes a buyer's market, you got the mini camps, and then, before we know it, we'll be getting ready for training camp. And the Eagles went to training camp last year as a non-finished product. They made that trade for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, so more things can continue to happen. Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com, and the Inside the Birds podcast. Get it on all your podcasting platforms, including YouTube. All right, Adam, appreciate it, bud.
All right. Oh, yeah, Mike, tomorrow, the next Intel with Greg Cosell on running backs. Wait till you hear what he says about Bijan Robinson. That's all I'm going to tell you.
All right. I'm looking forward to that big time. Thank you, Adam.
All right, man. See you.
Adam's back tomorrow here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.